Hey everybody, this is Dave Dugdale, learningdslrvideo.com. If I had to describe the GoPro Hero 3 in one word, it would have to be fun. Fun, 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 fun. This thing is a lot of fun to shoot with. I love getting angles that would have been a bear to get with my DSLR, like going really low or running with it, just putting in places that would be harmful to my Canon 5D Mark III. I've never had a lens this wide before, which is just a lot of fun. And I'm sure after a while, I would probably either correct for it in post or shoot with the medium or more of the tight setting or narrow setting inside the camera. But for right now, I just really love the wide, super wide look. I also noticed that people respond differently to this camera compared to a DSLR because it's so tiny and so small. I mean, I always put it in people's faces. They didn't care. My girls responded differently to it. It's just a lot of fun, you know, especially when you're on vacation and, you know, people don't want to be looking at a large piece of glass. If they're looking at a tiny little camera, they definitely respond differently. Probably the thing I like about this camera the most is, especially on vacations where you want to be present. You don't want to be filming stuff like whales or dolphins and watching it happen through a viewfinder or the back of a LCD display. You want to be watching it. And a lot of times with the GoPro, I just kind of had it off to the side or however I had it mounted. I just, you know, was on a pole or something. I was just kind of had it over here, and I wasn't looking at the back of the display if I had it on the unit at the time. I was just watching the dolphins or watching the whales and experiencing the moment right then and there, which I think is just the best way to experience a vacation. Also, using this camera is just a great exercise. Just if you just rent one just for a week or so, because it just gives you so much flexibility and makes you think differently about composition. It's like, I wonder what it looks like underside the boat. I wonder if I go under here, or what if I put it way up high here, or if I put on a pole and just, you know, go as high as I can. You know, just you think differently, which, you know, I think is definitely going to help me the way I shoot with my DSLR as well. You really get such a big picture out of such a tiny little camera. It's a wonderful image. I started shooting off with not Pro Tune just to experience that for the first like week, and then I switched over to Pro Tune and I just loved it. It's slightly desaturated, definitely flat, maybe a little bit unsharpened, and just a wonderful flat image that I could definitely work with. If you look at this one image of my oldest daughter, I think it's just like the perfect flat image. It's got so much detail in the shadows, and when you add some processing to it, I think it just looks awesome. I like it even better than neutral on my Canon DSLR with the contrast turned all the way down, or even Cine style. I like Pro Tune that much. I think it's an awesome picture style. This is definitely an outdoor camera. You can just get some awesome shots outside. When I went inside and tried many different things to make it look awesome, I just couldn't get the most awesome pictures inside. I don't know why, but maybe it was white balance issues or contrast or something, but it just doesn't work as well indoors. I like to saturate the heck out of my image. In that opening video, I saturated everything a lot because I wanted it to be fun and vibrant and just saturated, you know? But when the sun goes down, really the quality of the camera goes with it, because once the sun's down, it gets noisy, and the noise does not look good at all using the GoPro. I had this camera for a whole month and I had a ton of fun with it. So much fun that I really didn't get into the nitty-gritty detail tests that I should have. But if you want to get into like resolution tests and some of the Pro Tune tests and how it compares to some of the older GoPro cameras, definitely check out James Drake's video he did about a month or two ago. Time lapses with this thing are just fun and really easy to do. It's really easy to set up with the iPhone app. You just basically go through and say, I want it every 3 seconds, and I want this and I want that, and it's all automatic. So it just does it. And I had really good success with shooting some time lapses. So I definitely learned a lot while filming with this on how to film with it. And one of the first things that I learned is you definitely want to keep your fingers away from the lens. I don't know why I was making this silly mistake at the beginning, but when you do and you don't have the back on it, for the LCD back, you can definitely notice later that you got your fingers like all over the port. What's really fun is getting stuff into the foreground and sliding with it. Like I was just sliding on this sand, for instance, and I would just take it and slide across the sand, and it's so wide, it gets this really cool sliding movement to it. Another thing I had really good success with is just putting it like on your torso, like right here, and then just pan with your torso. And I got some really nice steady shots doing that, just handheld. It worked really well. One of the things I really noticed is if you anchor it to something like a boat and you have something in the foreground that's anchored, like a car, for instance, like these car shots, at least if you have a quarter of the frame filled up with a stationary object, like a helmet or something like that, and you could have all sorts of jittery motion on the rest of the frame, as long as you got something to anchor the viewer to, the shot looks amazing. It gives you the reference of that particular object, whether it be the car or the boat or whatever it is. You just take it and put it onto that object. As long as you have something in the foreground, it makes for a really great shot. A lot of times when I was out and I didn't have anything to wipe the port off with, if I got it wet, I would just blow on it, and it was surprising that it worked quite well, clearing out the lens. So I used a pole with the camera a lot, and there was one day, the last day, which we saw dolphins and a lot more whales, but I didn't bring my pole with me, and I was like, oh, I just wanted to take it and dip it into the water right where the dolphins were. But unfortunately, I didn't have that pole that day. I did forget my pole to dip into the water, but fortunately I met Thomas Brent. He's a dive master for Trilogy Excursions, and he was on the boat with us on one of the boat excursions, and he showed me some footage that he had gotten from his GoPro Hero 3 of the dolphins and the whales that you're seeing here. And he showed it to me. I was like, oh, Thomas, can I use this in my video? And he was like, sure. So he put in a Dropbox account and I included it in the video. So I just want to give a big shout out to Thomas for helping me out with the footage. So if you're wondering, you can do a lot of different settings on this camera, but it's pretty much auto everything in terms of exposure. You don't get to control the f-stop, the shutter speed, or the ISO. It's all done in camera. You can't manually control it, at least not that I know of. Which is kind of a good thing, because like I said, if you're on vacation and you just want to take this camera and just experience what's happening in front of you and just hold the camera off to the side or whatever you're doing, if it's mounted on your helmet or whatever, you can't control all the different things, in terms of exposure. And for the most part, it does really well, and the exposure reacts really quick to different lighting conditions. Like if I'm jumping in the air and then I land in the water, when I land in the water, it definitely brings up the brightness. Sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't. Like, for instance, I went through this tunnel and it worked perfectly that first time, but when I went through a second time, it really had a difficult time knowing where, what to do with the exposure. So one of the things I don't like about the camera so much is the shutter speed is all over the place. I don't mind having kind of a fast shutter speed sometimes, because while I'm working with somebody at GoPro to find out what exactly the shutter range is, but I would guess it's anywhere from a 30th of a second to like 2,000ths of a second. It's all over the place. But the one thing that kind of annoys me is when you're trying to intercut footage, and one time you've got motion, a nice motion blur of like a 50th of a second, and then the next cut you've got something that's a lot jittery and has a lot faster shutter speed. So it doesn't really intercut that well. One of the things you can do to get around it is using an ND filter that you can place on top of it. Chad Johnson has done a lot of stuff with this, and I will definitely link to his video in my description below, where you can find that video about him using ND filters to help slow down the shutter speed. So in terms of the ISO ranges from 100 to 400. And in terms of the, get this, in terms of the f-stop, the aperture, it's locked off at 2.8. I was amazed. I did a time lapse right down here out my office window, and everything's in focus, and I looked at the metadata, it said 2.8. I was like, really? 2.8? I mean, but the sensor is so tiny, it's so wide, everything's in focus. So I talked to Colin over at GoPro, and he said, yep, it's 2.8 fixed. And I was like, wow, I guess I didn't even look at that in the specs, but I was really surprised that everything's in focus at 2.8. One of the things I love about this camera is you got so many options in terms of your frame rate. So you can up the frame rate to 60 frames per second. and even higher, like the 60 frames per second going down the slide, which is just a lot of fun. And then what you can do is you can up it to 240 frames per second and slow it down. And you might be thinking, Dave, I don't want to do that because I'm going to take such a hit on resolution. And you do, but think creatively. Do a tile picture-in-picture like I'm doing here, and I think it adds a lot of value to your final product. So this whole review, like I said, I had a lot of fun doing it, and I didn't want to really do a comparison review like with the Sony or the Contour or the iPhone, for instance. I just wanted to see if this is the type of camera that would actually go into my camera bag and actually get used. It wouldn't be a novelty item, like let's say a macro lens that I might only pull out twice a year. I wanted to see if this is something I'd actually use. So this is really not a comparison video review. So after a whale breached like 3 times in front of our boat, it was a little baby whale, I think it was just born. My wife comes up to me and says, you got that right? You got that on the GoPro? And I looked down and said, no, I didn't get it. And the reason I didn't get it is because the GoPro locked up. And I was like, do I A, experience this like I want to with my eyes, or do I sit here and try to fumble with the battery trying to reboot the darn thing? And I wanted to experience it, so I just watched it, and I knew it would take me at least a minute to reboot the darn thing, so I totally missed that shot. And my wife was like, oh, how could you have missed that? And she's like, next time we're getting 2 GoPros, so we make sure we don't miss all this stuff. So basically what happens is this particular camera for me froze up many, many times. And what I'd have to do is basically pull the battery out, wait, not like 3 seconds, because I tried that. Like I would like put it back in, like here's a whale coming, I'm put it right back in, and I'd try to boot it back up and it would lock up. So basically what happened, you would see when you turn it on, it would stay in the default video mode, which I chose, and you would see that icon just on the screen, and it wouldn't go tell you how many pictures or whatever you've got on there to the the next screen you would normally see. It would just lock up, and you couldn't turn it off. You could try with the Wi-Fi. You try all the different buttons, press them as long as you want, and nothing would happen. So you'd have to pull the battery out, like wait 10 seconds, put it back in, and then go again. And then once you got the camera rolling, and just don't turn it off. Now here's the inherent problem is the battery on this thing sucks. It really sucks. The internal battery that you get doesn't last very long. Not nearly long enough. So you want to think to yourself, well, I want to conserve battery, so I'm going to turn it off. But when you go to turn it back on, it locks up and you're ready, there's a whale coming and you're like, crap, it's not going to work. So what I found, the best thing to do is get the external battery pack, put it on there. Don't use the LCD display, because I've used the LCD display quite a few times. You can't even see the darn thing in the sun. And where do you shoot most of your footage with the GoPro? Is in the sun. So I'm looking at the back of the screen. I can't hardly see anything. So I just took the LCD display off, put the battery pack on. And what I do is, take the battery out, put it back in, or whatever I need to do to get it working. And once it works, don't turn it off. Then you can like hit record and stop, and it won't freeze up on me. At least the unit I had. Now I went and I talked to GoPro about this. I talked to Colin at GoPro, and we first made sure that I had the most up-to-date firmware, which I did because I updated it. The second thing we wanted to check out was the SD card that I was using. He asked me a few questions. He says, yep, you got the right card. It was a 32 gig card, which I'll put down in my description below. And he said, yeah, we like that card. And then the third thing he talked about was formatting the card on a regular basis. Now, this is something that I might have not done because I didn't know about it in the manual, is basically when you say erase all, like within the iPhone app, when you erase all, that actually, they should reword that as like format the card, because that formats the card when you erase all. And I don't know if I did that every time before I recharged the battery and I was getting ready to shoot the next day. I don't know if I did that or not. So that might have been the reason, but I did do it several times. I might have deleted the images like within the computer off the card, just put the card back in and just start recording. And maybe that's what maybe corrupted the data or did something to make the GoPro hang. So in terms of battery life, when you use the external backpack, it felt about right. I was be able to leave it on for about 2 hours. I'd get about 150 clips at maybe 20 seconds a piece on my 32 gig card, no problem. The card didn't fill up. before the battery would die. So I'd get about 2 hours of use, which seemed pretty decent. But if you use just the internal battery with nothing else, it was very disheartening because you would turn the unit on, maybe you would set up frame of a shot with Wi-Fi turned on just for a few minutes, and then a few minutes later you would just look down and you would already see one of the bars from the battery disappear, and you're like, oh, I'm already losing battery. So if you're gonna be using it for more than, I'd say, 20, 25 minutes, definitely put the external battery backpack on it. So I talked about the iPhone app before, and it's wonderful. You can change settings on it so quickly, and I'm sure I would get better at it if I had it a lot longer, but going through the menu system on the front of the unit using the 2 different buttons was really like, there's a whale coming and I'm trying to change the resolution. I'm like, crap, I want to change it. I want to slow down the slow motion or something. I was like, I just can't do it in time. Using the iPhone app, you can go through there a lot faster when the Wi-Fi is turned on. Now, what's amazing with this Wi-Fi is Wi-Fi will travel through walls like in your home and, multiple walls through your home. But it's really interesting. You take the GoPro and you submerge it within maybe a ½ inch or an inch of water. All of a sudden, the Wi-Fi just dies. I don't know why. It'll go through walls, but it won't go through a ½ inch of water. Just kind of interesting. And also, it comes with a Wi-Fi remote. But to be honest, I never used it. So in terms of the optional accessories, like the suction cup, I did use that on my car several times in the rental car. One of the things about it though is even if you put it on a very smooth surface that's very clean and you press it down and you ratchet it on, that thing after like 15-20 minutes will just fall over. So you don't want that to happen and falling off your car. So one of the things I would do is I would tether the suction cup to the car somehow. So if it did fall off, which it never did, because I would never drive for more than like 10 minutes and I would just stop and then, re-suction it type thing. But definitely don't trust the suction cup thing too much. If you're flying with this unit, I made the mistake of keeping it in the enclosure, the waterproof enclosure. And when I got home and I opened up, I could hear the vacuum go, and I was like, whoa, that was dangerous. I shouldn't have done that. So if you're traveling with it, and somebody actually wrote me and said his was damaged when he got up in a plane and it cracked or did something to the housing. So definitely don't fly with it. The audio is pretty much useless. I wouldn't say useless. When you have the enclosure, you have to use like a skeleton door. I think it's called the skeleton back door to actually get decent audio out of it. Or if you're really interested, because I didn't deal with audio much with it in the 30 days I had it, definitely check out Chad Johnson's video. He does a whole bunch of comparisons using the GoPro with external mics plugged into it and stuff like that. So definitely a good video to check out. So should I be a hero and buy one of these? Yes, I definitely want one of these. I don't want the one I reviewed because it's got faulty hardware or something. And I'm going to be going to NAB next month in April, and I'll go by the GoPro booth and find out what they're doing to maybe fix these problems. So I'll definitely wait until I need one of these again, if I go on vacation or I have some sort of footage that I need in really odd angles. I'm definitely going to get one of these. It's just a question of them ironing out some of these issues. Maybe they rushed it to market right before Christmas time. I have no idea. Maybe they should have waited 6 months to iron out some of these items. I don't know. But image quality wise, it's awesome. It's a, really, especially, I shot some stuff in 4K and you can zoom in on it. Especially watch James Drake's video on this. It's just incredible, the resolution you can get with this camera. So that's pretty much it. I hope you guys found this review helpful. Again, if you did and you like my videos and you'll help support my site, definitely go over to the links I have on my webpage or the description below and buy from that link. It just helps support what I'm doing here. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye.